DJ's right. And we're going to talk today about Halloween for teens, and then next week we're going to talk about Halloween for kids. And the reason why we're doing it now is that way you have activities prepared now, so you're not scrambling at the last minute like I usually do. And hopefully you can see some different things that you will be able to do with your teens. So welcome to another American TESOL Presents Free Friday webinars. Every single Friday we are here. Well, we try to be here. Roscoe as well. Me and the little pug here. Hey, little pug, you want to say hi? Say hi, little pug. He said this little monster stuff. And you can bring a friend. It's free. We will have certificates if you go to the bit.ly, and everything in lowercase, ELT links, you'll find everything. So you'll even find the October webinars as well. And so today you can actually do a lot of these activities with teens in general. But the reason why we're talking about them now is because Halloween is one of those really great times when you can use a lot of horror in the classroom. You can use monsters, and you can use all these kind of scary topics, which I think are wonderful. So these are some good ways to integrate that. And the great thing about it is you don't necessarily have to focus on Halloween. So if you're one of those countries and you can't talk about Halloween and stuff, then maybe you can just teach about horror in general. And you might say, horror, how can I do that with teenagers, and how can I do it in the classroom? Well, when you look at things right now that teens are interested in, horror is a big thing that is a part of our culture. It's something that we're really fascinated with. Teens especially, you can see in the video games, they have monsters in a lot of their video games. You see things like World of Warcraft, which is really highly popular, and that was they did research and they found that millions of people around the world learn English through playing World of Warcraft. And the reason why they did that is because now games are very social. You'll see it in the music. They have a lot of music videos. There's like Rod Zombie and all these others. You see a lot of different music groups that have masks and faces and horror themed kind of bands. So that's something that teens really like. The TV shows, there's a popular movie called Warm Bodies. It's about zombies. So there's Twilight. It's about wolves and it's about vampires. But even when you think back, when we were learning, we learned things like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. When we learned things like Anne Rice Interview with the Vampire. So horror and monsters have been something that we have liked as a culture since the very beginning. So these are things that you can tie in, and they relate to the whole Halloween feel. So you don't even have to teach Halloween. You can just teach horror. So we're going to talk about some activities and lesson ideas that you can relate just in general. This is in Leipzig. They have a zombie walk. And here in San Antonio, we have that as well. There's also now a zombie run. I have just seen this. We have that in our city, and they have it all around the U.S. now. Is this marathon you run, and you have to look like a zombie. So it's definitely something in culture that the teens love. So we can make a horror flick, and there's a lot of ways you can make a horror flick. You can simply have it to where you can do it with a mobile device. Your teens can go and they can make it different types of videos. You don't have to have any fancy kind of thing. So what I do is I group them in fours. Or what you can do, there's two ways you can approach this. You can put them in small groups, and then they can make the horror film. They can involve anybody that they want. You can give them a checklist of the vocabulary word maybe you want them to have. I always give them a storyboard. A storyboard is where they plan out each scene. And we'll look at a place that they can do that in a little bit. And you can have it to where they can they plan their horror flick. What's it going to be about? What's going to be the plot? Who are going to be the characters? And then they can plan it quite easily. So when you look at the links today, you're actually going to find things on how to plan a movie in general. So I'm not going to show you some of the things on making a movie because in previous sessions we talked about YouTube. YouTube has so many effects. It has so many different things to really help craft your movie. So you don't have to have any apps or anything like that for it. But what you do is you have each group film. So you come up with the movie for the whole entire class, and then you have each group responsible for filming different elements. And this can be a long project. And so when you do something like that, then at the end you have to tie it all together. Well, Windows Movie Maker, you can have FlixTime Online, you can have YouTube, any type of video editor to where you can put the clips in is really great. So they can just film it. If you can't show so the great thing about a horror flick is if you look at this girl, you can't tell who she is. So you can easily make sure that their faces and everything are to where you can't tell what they look like. So that's one of the things that you can do. And it's a good way to put all the scenes together because you have to film different scenes with it. The other part, so they can dress up, and that could be one way to disguise them, or you can have them do it with characters. They can actually draw characters, and they can make the horror flick that way. They could do it with puppets. They can do it with different types of toys as well. You can create different effects for it. YouTube has cartoonizer. YouTube has black and white. YouTube even has all these kinds of effects. Or you can do it with a mobile device. There are some cool things such as Quo movie effects. It'll put in explosions. It's for Android. It's for iOS as well. You can do this creature effects and creature effects. All of these are free apps, by the way. So these are mobile apps. You find them on your smart device. They're free for downloading. Once you download it, you don't have to have the internet access. All you do is you download it, and then it creates a filter, and then you put that with your video. It makes a very short clip. But what it allows the students to do is to have monsters and Hollywood effects in their movie. So this is something that you may want to consider. And then you put it together with Windows, and it can upload to your computer. And like I said, as soon as you only need one. I only have my well, I have two things. I have my Android, but I also have my iPad, and I downloaded on that. And after I downloaded on that, the students use it whenever they need to use it, because not everybody's using it at the same time. They're all making their movies at different times. And then we put it together with Windows Movie Maker. Or actually, I put it together with iMovie. That's what I do. You can put it together on your iPad, though. I found Video Editor free, and I love it, or Splice, and it allows me to put in captions. It allows me to put in who made the movie. It allows me to track, so that there's a lot of things that you can add to that as well. One of the ones you can do instead is do a black and white movie and do a silent film. Yes, exactly. BJ says iMovie and GarageBand. Exactly. And you don't have to use them online. GarageBand is the video editor. So you can do a silent film. A silent film is an easy way to do a horror flick, and you can even show them and introduce them to black and white horror flicks in the past, and they love it because they really haven't seen these black and white films. And then with YouTube, you can make that black and white filter, or a lot of times with your phone or even image editors, you can make everything black and white. And so the great thing about a black and white film, a silent film, is that you have the dialogue. So after each scene, it comes up with words that say something. And she screamed, ah, or something like that. And it's really more about the acting and the acting emoting that. So you'll actually see lesson plans and stuff today when you go to the Pearl Tree. So I'll love that. I'll put that in as well. You can make a monster music video. So maybe you have seen the famous Michael Jackson Thriller. That's a really cool one. So if you don't have time for a big project like making a silent film or a horror movie, which do take time, you probably need to do that within a month. One of the things that you can do is, I love JibJab. Is make a music video. So that's pretty easy to do too. There's one called Video Effects, which is a great way. It's a free app. I think it's much easier to do it with an app, and that one's made for creating a music video. You can add songs, popular songs, through that particular one. Yeah, you could use something like Toontastic as well, and other things, as long as that they can. So one of the things they can do, and something that okay, so my partner Jake, he teaches sixth grade, and he teaches it bilingual, so it's Spanish, and he teaches English as well. And so one of the ways that he gets his students to think about English is they actually write the music themselves. So what they do is they've already made, they wrote down the lyrics, and they pick out. You can go to a music site that offers free beats, so they actually mix their own beats. And he has a great film of the kids dancing, and they made a geography music to they what's that called, Skrillex and that kind of stuff. A dubstep. They made a dubstep geometry map. So they get really creative, and then they pick that up, and then they make these different types of music videos. So you can have it to where they have the lyrics, and they write the lyrics, and they make the soundtrack with Creative Commons music or Garage Band, like BJ was saying. Or you can have it to where they use a popular song already, and they put a horror element in it, like Thriller. They can something like that. They can remake Thriller in the now. People are always bringing back films anyway. They're always doing cover songs, so they can make a cover song of it. And celebrate it, so they can do a monster video. Another thing that they can teens love to do is create a haunted house, and so they do this for the whole entire school. And this is a great project. What you do is you break them in pairs, the class, and each pair has a section, or you can even group them in groups of 4, and each of them has a section within the haunted house. So one will be the first stage, the second stage, the third stage, because you go in order. And you can give them what they can be responsible for. Okay, the introduction. How are you going to, how are you going to come up here and craft the first scene? So this takes a lot of language learning as well. They have to interact, they have to collaborate, they can plan it out on a storyboard or something like that, or a graphic organizer. They have to brainstorm, and they have to write down. They can do blueprints, and they can say, oh, this is what we think of the introduction. And then they have to work with the entire class, and they collaborate to make a really good haunted house. Now, this is for the entire school, so this is physical. This is actually not virtual. This doesn't take technology. But they can add things. Like if they go online, there's a lot of ways that you can get. Maybe I'll just write a blog post, because there's a lot of free places to get sound effects, where you can go and they can have creepy sound effects as part of their haunted house. You can usually find CDs and things like that as well. Now, one of the tricks that we have used in the past is they make it dark, and sometimes they use things like spaghetti, and spaghetti they'll say, "Ooh, this is brains" or something like that. So there's a lot of different tricks that you can use um, that make that haunted house haunted. So you can talk about that lighting, you can talk about adding sound effects, and you can talk about creating atmosphere, and brings out a lot of different conversation. The next idea, this is a good time when you can actually do role-playing games with students. I was talking about World of Warcraft. What is a role-playing game? There's different types of role-playing games. So role-playing games usually involve monsters and fairies. The most famous one is Dungeons and Dragons. And Dungeons and Dragons, you choose a character. You can be a fairy. You can be there's different types of monsters, and with it's storytelling, so you have to play that role live. But the other part is you develop your character, you write a lot and make a lot of choices about your character. Now you're given certain types of powers, and then you write about your character. Oh, her name is Elise. Elise can do this. And so there's a lot of different things that yeah, Minecraft is the most popular right now. And what you do is there's different types. So you can have LARP. LARP is a live action role play. So what that means is you usually get dice and you have a board, and there's things online to do this. But if you do that, then that means it's in the class. You play it live. They can even dress up. There are whole entire clubs that do this. Every other weekend, I know friends, and they all get together. There's about 40 of them, and they do this just on their own. But it's great for learning languages. It's great for developing characters. It's great um, for using language, difficult language as well. So live action role play means the whole students will do it. Now you can do it online through a video game. So that's MMORPGs. That's massive multimedia, something like that. Role-playing game. Sorry, it's when it's a big one. That's when you think about things like World of Warcraft, which is the most famous one and originators by far. Now you have others that are coming again. So you can do something like role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, where they create characters and they create the worlds and then they act them out. And then there's different stories with that as well. So I have a whole entire lesson plan. It's on wayward.org. You do have to sign up for that. But he creates a whole entire unit, and so he talks about how he teaches language learners and his teams about that. That'll be one of the bookmarks that I include as well. So you can find all of that here. You can have them create ghost stories. Now, when you have ghost stories, students, you can have them gather around first, and then you can have them go outside. It doesn't have to be dark. Or another thing that I've done with my students is we've had it inside, and they all sit in pillows, and we dim the lights, and then I put up lights and stuff to kind of give it that aura. And then they listen to a ghost story. I try to not make it. This is a good time to bring in those ghost stories that like The Raven and stuff. So you can teach them popular literature as well. This is a good time to start introducing an Edgar Allan Poe story. So you create the atmosphere for it. You read them a very short story. The one that I like the most from Edgar Allan Poe that's really good to do this with is I believe it has something to do with oh, I forgot the name of it. Oh, The Telltale Heart. And The Telltale Heart is about someone who commits murder, and then every day the ghost kind of speaks to them. So you can have these short stories that are about literature, and then you read it to them, and you create the atmosphere so they don't even know that Edgar Allan Poe is something that's very, very classic. that you're teaching them, but you can still do that. There's a lot of different, you want to make it a short story. And it's all in the way that you read it. So you can put sound effects, you can put the dim light, and you want to create that atmosphere. But you can also play a story. There's a lot of stories out there that are online. Hitchcock, Goosebumps are all great ideas, like Fabiana and BJ are saying. Um, yeah, sometimes they are too creepy. So you can do a lot of different, as long as it's a short story. You can show them a small one from YouTube. Sometimes they have them on YouTube. But the idea is for them to listen to one and then the follow-up activity. So here are some ones you can go. There's moonlitroad.com, and you can get audio and sometimes visual spooky stories as well. And some of these were made for language learners. So they talk about Civil War historic stories about ghosts. So even a real story, a lot of times you can go online and there's a very famous show, at least American show, where it talks about ghosts. So you can see clips about a ghost. So you can do it that way. You can introduce them to clips about a ghost, a real haunting, or you can have them learn about myths, legends, and fantasies. They can go into folklore about the zombie or the chupacabra. That's something that we do. One of the tales that we share a lot in because we learn a lot about Spanish culture here is we talk about Spanish Mexican legends, and here we have one called La Llorona. And La Llorona is this story about a woman who kills her children, and then she haunts. So this is something that we actually teach as when you teach about bilingual here. This is a popular story that is often taught. So you can teach them about these things during the Halloween time, because this is the time when these stories that you're already going to teach them are really good. Here they even have weird true stories. They have about they have Civil War stories. So they have a lot of different haunting ones. You can go to shadowlands.net. So they can at shadowlands.net is where they talk about ghosts and they talk about hauntings. And then they create their own ghost story. Oh, sorry, so let's go back. They create their own ghost story. They can work in pairs. They can do by themselves. They can either talk about like maybe their grandparent they can interview, and they can go around and they can talk about different types of haunted places, maybe their parents, or a myth in their culture they can talk about. Maybe there's something like La Llorona in their culture. Maybe there's a scary story or ghost or haunted tale that their parents can tell them about. One of the times we had them interview their grandparents, and their grandparents would tell them these stories that had this haunted ghost type of element, and then they recreated that in a multimedia presentation. You can use something, for example, like you can still use audio boo, and then they make little clips. They can use something like GarageBand, or they can use something where they can add different sound effects and stuff to make it as well, or they can do like a short movie. They can use something like ZooBurst as well, or Little Bird Tales to make a book. Maybe they make a video book about it instead. You can create a zombie comic or horror comic or graphic novel. So this is something to get students writing for a long term. They use a lot of language, but one of the things that they can do with the language is because comics are made in frames, it's really great for language learners. It's a great way to help them understand language because it's chunked. So cognitively, it's very good for them. So you can have them make like a zombie comic or a graphic novel, and they can once again do this individuals and pairs, or you can have this as a whole class where each you give them the characters and they're responsible for the beginning, the intro, and things like that. You can use something like Comic Master. Comic Master is a great way to tell a long story. This is a free online tool. It does not work on your mobile device, but it's free, it's online, and the great thing about Comic Master, it's an educational resource. But one of the things that it does is it gives you characters and all kinds of things to make it easier. And it walks students along the way. It's like, decide how you want the page of your graphic novel to look. And it's for long term. This is at least 12 to 20 pages. So it's something that your students have to write almost like a big book about. They choose characters and props to appear in the scenes. They add dialogues and captions. They add special effects. And then they save their graphic novel, and their teens can go ahead and do this. If you're teaching history, they can make it about some horror elements in history. So if you're teaching the Civil War and things like that, you can base it off of that as well, because there's a lot of horrible things that come out with that as well. So you can make it related to your particular subject. Here they get to pick the different frames. Now, that's where they'll add the characters, that's where they'll add the scenes. They have them do different things where they can save it, they can add drawings, all kinds of cool stuff. My favorite one is Comics Head Lite, and Comics Head is an app, and it's on your, they can either do it zombies or monsters or anything. They don't necessarily have to do a zombie. I was teaching about zombies earlier, so I kind of kept the same elements there. But and Comics Head Lite is for Android, and so if you have this, you have the ability to make a long comic as well. Makes Beliefs is another one. I love Makes Beliefs. It's one of my favorite comic creators as well. But the great thing about Comics Lite, Heads Lite, is it's for any mobile device, but you can upload your own pictures and you can draw in it as well. Or they have a set of different monsters and characters. You can choose from backgrounds. You can choose from different like BAM and action types of captions like that. Or you can simply write your own. So you have lots and lots of great things you can do with it. Fabiana said Goosebumps. And so now I'm going to show you some cool apps and websites that students and teens love that have to do with horror. So Goosebumps is definitely one. And if you go to the Goosebumps website, you can find games and activities they can play. They have challenges. They have videos. They have books. And I know my teenagers loved the 8th graders and 7th graders that we were teaching, who struggled with reading a lot. That's one thing they would always read is Goosebumps. They love Goosebumps. So Goosebumps is definitely a very good option. There's Stand Behind Hollywood. Now, the great thing about Stand Behind Hollywood is if you go to the site, you can even just Google it as well. It has a lot of different activities that teach math and science. So VJ will love that because he's our math expert here. And they do this with different types of Hollywood actors and so when you make so this, you may recognize her. You can type her in the box if you recognize this character. She's a famous actress. She's from one of the most famous science show out there. But not only is she an actress in real life, she's also a neurologist. She has her PhD, so she's a very smart actress as well. But when you look at different types of even forensic science, CSI, all of those have a horror element in it. All of those have different kinds of scenes. Yes, Beauty and Brains, she's from the Big Bang Theory. So the Big Bang Theory is very popular science. They get consultants, and they're consultants for smart TV shows like that are actual doctors or PhDs and things like that. It's forensic science. You have all of these forensic science films out there or shows, and one of the things is that they actually have experts and consultants that have those backgrounds. So Stand Behind Hollywood has lesson plans now that they have developed because of that. And the one that they have most fleshed out, they're still building it and stuff, is the zombie section. So you can, they have these zombie-based different types of activities and lesson plans you can download for free. They have videos. Here they talk about doing autopsies of the brain. They learn about things like the rate of viral infection, how if you're bitten, there's actually a zombie calculator that I'll put up there. And one of the things it does is when you get bitten, it makes you put in your weight. It makes you put in your, I think your diet, what you eat, all these kinds of things, your height. And then it calculates if you are bitten by a zombie, the rate it would take to go and turn into a zombie. How long you haven't to get the serum before you turn into a zombie. So these are all kinds of things that you can learn and do with this type of horror film. There's a lot of video games you can actually play with the horror element that teach language learning and different types of concepts as well. UrgentEvoke.com is one of those. In Urgent Evoke, this was as something that you see the famous Jane McDonald goals. She was in charge of making this. She makes games that change the world. And it's made as a graphic novel, but one of the things it does is it also has students think about, it talks about the future and how we have, in the future, there's no more food and things like this, and there's infection and stuff like that. So students can play these types of games. It takes a lot of language to learn these kind of games. Like you learn language, plus they have to do things. They actually have to have missions and solve different types of things. So you learn by playing a video game. But there, if you go to the digital play by Graham Stanley and Kyle Maher, who actually won an Elton for this, and Elton is international prize, an international award for innovation. I've been nominated for 2, so I'm actually kind of happy about that. Never won one though, maybe someday. And so they have this great site out there, and I try to tell people about it all the time. And one of the reasons why is because it has lesson plans, free lesson plans, that have to do with video games. So they give you everything, and they give you something called a walkthrough. But they also do it, it's very long lesson plans too. They have it by skills, reading, writing, math, all of it you'll find on there. They even have a language focus. If you do teach language learners, they go by and they list all this, the third conditional, the past tense, the future tense. They give it by age group as well. They tell you the game, they give you a link, and then they give you pictures and what's called a walkthrough. So they give you every, what kind of conversations you can have. They give you pre-task. They give you during playing the game. They even give you hints for setting it up, how to play it as a cast, how to play it with little technology. So there's so many different things that they, location here, see, they have at the computer room. So they have everything for it. Here is a zombie story. They also have one about zombie pirates. They have it for teenagers. They also have it for young learners as well. You can do something like this. It is lkidsgames.com, and this is a lesson I've seen that a lot of different teachers are experimenting with and doing when it comes to horror, which is prepare for a zombie apocalypse. So your students here, they actually are broken up into groups. You show them this type a PowerPoint, and then you walk them. So this PowerPoint, if you go there, it actually has the PowerPoint for you. So you don't even have to do anything. You can go in tomorrow, you can show them the PowerPoint and have this zombie apocalypse type of activity. You break them into groups of 2 or 3, and they're actually saying, you're going to say, oh no, the backstory is we have been infected by an infection. No, well, I mean, but we teach about war, we teach about all these kind of things. And so what they're saying is they're preparing for zombie apocalypse. You can take that part out, because one of the things that you do when you're preparing for zombie apocalypse is you have to talk about how you're going to survive. So they might say things like, we need canned food. They might say things like, we need a hideout. We need things like, so it makes them go through that practicality as well. Because you can even take out the violent stuff. You can say, how are you going to hide out, and how are you going to stay alive, and how are you going to stay away from the zombies? How are you going to make sure that the zombies, oh, well, our plan as a group is we're going to go out at in the morning because zombies can't be out in the morning. We can't have milk because milk rot. So they think about different things like that as well. Yeah, exactly. It is like World War Z. Another one that they can do, and I like this from One Stop English, is a zombie's daily routine. So they think about what a zombie is, and then, or ghosts, or monsters, or aliens. You can have them do either. It's not necessarily zombies. And then they have to think like Frankenstein. So you can give each, you break them up into pairs, and you give them each a monster. They can take this out of a bag. They can have a vampire. They can have a werewolf. They can have a zombie. They can have a ghost. They can have an alien. So each of them is responsible for coming up with a routine. The students will do things like, oh, well, the vampire, a vampire is going to have this routine. It's going to wake up. It's going to brush their teeth with blood. I mean, whatever. they decide, you can give them a time, so it teaches math as well with the routine. They have a clock. And they kind of think about their own routine. So first, the pre-activity is what kind of routine do they have. You can have them write it down really quick, and then they come, and then they have to do that kind of thing with whatever they have as well. But you go a step further, and they're going to make it into a presentation. And they can use something like piktochart, which I absolutely love, or they can use something like ThingLink, where they go and they actually write and make a visual thing of what their monsters is. This is a zombie's life. This is a Dracula's life. This is a werewolf's life. This is a chupacabra's life. And then they go through the whole entire time, and then they say what it does, what is happening. And then they make the drawings and stuff like that. You can have them work in groups, and they can research a monster like Frankenstein and things like that, and create an infographic of how dangerous it is and how to plan a survival plan. So if you ever met sometimes you see this for bears. A lot of times they'll have this for camping. They say, okay, so if you ever meet a bear, what would you do? If you ever meet a shark in the water, how are you going to survive? So they do the same kind of thing with piktochart or with ThingLink, or even visually. But I prefer piktochart. Piktochart is the easiest way to do this. They could do this with a Prezi Republic as well. So one of the things they do is they research the monster, and they have to find the weaknesses. So they find the strengths and the weaknesses, like Frankenstein, and then they write a survival guide. So if you ever run into a Frankenstein, this is how you survive, which could be very useful, You never know when you're gonna run into one. Yeah, what am I doing here? Okay, so they can create a zombie game as well. Now you don't have to. A monster game as well. A lot of times, video games, like I was saying, have these monster effects, and so you can have that. If you have an iPad, then this is one of them as well, that you can use with it. But you don't have to have an iPad. You can use something such as Scratch. That's an online making game creation tool. So let me go ahead and add that in the chat box. Or they can create their game with that online for free, or they can do something with interactive fiction. And this is called Quest. Quest is the best one. They can integrate videos. It's a text adventure, so they have to create the text for it. And the thing about interactive text fiction, when they do these kind of games and stuff like this, is that they actually, the students, after they create these games, then their peers play the game. So it's very interactive in that as well. With the text adventure, their peers will have to enter text as part of the game. It's really cool. It's a little difficult too. So we were talking about things that students love, and I misspelled JibJab here, sorry. But Peggy was saying that as well, JibJab.com. The great thing about JibJab.com is for every Halloween, they come up with a free thing that students can do. I haven't figured out yet what the one is here. They have a skeleton dance. They have, once I did that monster video that you saw previously. It's very easy to do. And then you can use that. If you do have free apps available, then there are ones that are really kind of funny and cool that have to deal with Halloween, which is horror fingers. They can make their fingers into these horror characters, and then they can write dialogues and scripts to go with it. So it's a funny way to get them to do that. Um, yes, exactly. So they only use a free option every once in a while. There's a really cool game, and it has a lot of language, and the students walk through it, and it's called Nerd versus Zombies. So your teen will walk through, and they can, and they, it talks about bullying as well. So it's great because bullying is also, and October is National Bullying Prevention Month, so it talks about bullying as well. So we're going to wrap up already. Another one is Zombie Physics Light. You learn physics while with zombies. So it's a great way to learn that. And then one of my favorites, they also have math versus zombies. So you can learn math that way as well. So they have a lot of zombie related themes. And for Halloween, they have a MASH Halloween game, has an app as well. MASH is something that it stands for Mansion Apartment. We used to do this on paper all the time when I was growing up. I love doing this. So now they made it to where they integrate it with learning as well, because you do a lot of writing and a lot of thinking. So it's great for learning language and writing and literacy. But it's called Mansion, Apartment, Shack, and House. And what happens is that you can play this and you fill out the different types of categories. So here, list your costume. Are you going to be a vampire, a candy corn, Keisha, a mermaid? Are you going to be Belle? Are you going to be the person from Warm Bodies, a zombie? And then you have this thing, and it counts the seconds. And after you fill in these different types of categories, it crosses up for you. You play this in pairs, by the way. And then the other thing is then it creates a story with it. So it tells you, it's sort of like, it's sort of when you do those fill-ins. I forgot what those are called. My brain just, you know what I'm talking about. It's sort of like that as well. So it's kind of like a gap fill. On Halloween, you would dress up as a candy corn and things like that. So those are the links today, and then you can see me and little Rossi. Come over here, buddy. And here's his horror face. Ah! Okay, and we will see you next week when we talk about no, I wouldn't say it's safe for kids, maybe. I'm not sure. I think it's more of a teen thing because they do a lot of things that are teen, so I think it's more teen oriented. But it's an app. It's safe. You just got to worry about their language and think about that. But, you know, it's a great way to teach digital literacy, to teach about what the footprint is, because you can say, we're going to post these up and your parents are going to see them, and your grandma. He's getting bored already. But thank you so much, and we will see you next week too when we talk about, oh, my buddy, I'm sorry. Are you okay? Are you okay? When you talk about Halloween activities.